underrated episode, I feel, is the heart attack. Um, I don't know, because I remember it was the Busboy episode, which I think was aired a little more, well, was written later on, I believe it is, because I keep saying in these reviews, I keep realizing that not all these shows that the day they aired were not or how they were produced. I wonder if this was before or after the Busboy was written, because that episode was also where Jerry was advised, hey, the show is called Seinfeld. Make sure you're giving yourself a main story in this. In this episode, it kind of goes back to Jerry kind of being like a background, more like a background character, because the main story did not revolve around Jerry. Even though I also feel the goofiness of the Kramer character was brought out more. In the first several episodes of seasons 1 and 2, and of course, really, mentioned the Chinese restaurant, of course, how Kramer was very well, very secluded to his apartment. Now, in more episodes since the Chinese restaurant, even though I think this was probably written before the Chinese restaurant, or it was put off, I think, what was it again? Kramer didn't really leave his apartment. Not only is Kramer leaving his apartment now in these episodes, but I feel like, the goofiness of his character. Like, his crazy ideas, like going to see a healer, in this episode. In the next episode, The Revenge, we will definitely talk about how Kramer's, physical comedy began to evolve. But the heart attack. The main story from the heart attack is, of course, George thinking he was having a heart attack when they were at Monk's. This is right after, of course, first off, he snuck a cucumber in to put on his food, and then Jerry also, like, the sub-story for Jerry was, at the beginning of the episode, he was half asleep, he was watching something on TV, and some guy starts screaming out something about flaming globes of Sigma or something like that, who was actually played by producer Larry David, who made a guest appearance in, first of many guest appearances that Larry David made, both on camera and off camera. And Jerry woke up in the middle of the night thinking what he said was funny, wrote down the joke, but for the next day or so, he can't read the writing until he sees, at the end of the episode, the same scene was played in George's hospital room, but then Jerry thought the joke was not funny. There was that. That was mainly the side episode for Jared, and him to sit in the background is thinking George is acting ridiculous, and what Kramer suggested for him was ridiculous as well. So George was trying to, at Monks, was trying to read, the joke, and he goes, I think I'm having a heart attack. And then Jerry thought at first he was trying to, change what he's saying, but of course George is going, like overreacting for sure, saying, I think I'm having a heart attack, call an ambulance, do something, please, here. So they call an ambulance, George goes to the hospital, of course, Jerry, he's still overreacting. He said, oh, I'm finished, I'm screwed, this and that. But Jerry's like saying stuff like, well, I can call Susan Davis. I can, do something with your Superman comic. Basically getting George to really wake up and say, come on, are you really that serious? Do you really think you had a heart attack? And then Elaine came in, of course, was trying to play along at first, but George basically told Jerry to just get over with, just kill him. And he takes a pillow and tries to smother him with it. And Elaine walks in on them, and he's like, Jerry, what are you doing to him? The doctor came in, who was smitten by Elaine. He says that George does not have a heart attack, but he needs to have his tonsils removed. Have a tonsillectomy. He's being told, of course, that it's routine surgery. Later on, well, first off, Elaine then says, I think you're going to have a chat with that doctor, who she does go on a date with, and it was just not good. Elaine was not appealed by his, tongue talk and whatnot. So, it was only a one-day thing, and that was it. So, Elaine basically came back to the hospital at the end of the episode and said that she didn't want to stay too long, but she was trying to avoid Dr. Tongue, as she said. which of course we didn't see again after Elaine rejected a kiss from Goodnight and basically was just like, nah, no second date here. But after George finally has to get his tonsils taken out, Kramer comes in. He sits down, he's bragging about the hospital food, and he, of course, is going on and on, thinking that George has a heart attack. It's like, how could you have a heart attack? You're young and this and that, which is revealed in this episode. George claims he's 33 years old, which that was news to me because I never actually, heard George reveal, anybody didn't really reveal his age. I heard them there say, they're in their 30s. I think we're for probably most of the series. And then Kramer's going on and on. Finally, Jerry's like, Kramer, enough. He didn't have a heart attack. He just has to have his tonsils taken out. Kramer, of course, goes berserk, goes, what? Oh, no, you can't do this here. You gotta get some better help, These doctors, this ain't routine surgery. It could change you. They could kill you, George. And for the first time also, the fictitious friend of Kramer, Bob Sacamano, who they never brought on screen. Kramer mentioned him how many times, but he never got brought on screen. He says how Bob Sacamano came in for a hernia operation, but that was not routine surgery. Now he's sitting by a window going, my name is Bob! And then he's like, George, scared for his life, like, George, you gotta do something. You can't let them hurt you here. So then he recommends him going to see his healer friend, Tor Ekman. And Jerry's like, oh, this is ridiculous. And he goes with them to see Tor. And Jerry's like, I'm just here for material. Like, he does not believe one bit in Tor. Tor comes in. And I'll be honest, watching this episode again and watching Tor, I kind of got Sheldon Cooper vibes with Tor. I mean, yes, Sheldon Cooper from Big Bang Theory was no healer whatsoever. But just the way he acted, just the way, the way he observed things, the way he talked, it just made me think of Sheldon. So first thing he does when he looks at George, after he awkwardly gives Kramer a hug, he goes, what month were you born? George says, April. He goes, you should have been born in August. Your parents would have been more worthy to wait. And George is like, oh, okay. And of course, the biggest one that really caught George in awe, he says, do you use hot water when you shower? Yeah. Stop using it. And he's just like, not even lukewarm, not even on the face, not even this. He's like, no, not at all. And then, of course, Jerry, who's thinking things inside his head, obviously just doubting this guy, he looks over to Jerry and he goes also, you need to eat more dairy. And everything Tor is saying, Kramer is just endorsing everything like he's some type of a god. One thing I do remember is also from the bloopers, this scene with the line where Tor says something about I used to live with the Eskimos 30 years ago, and they used to bury their faces into the snow, and Jason Alexander just could not get through that scene. There must have been like 4 or 5 outtakes on the blooper reel for that scene in general. But after, do some observations, some weird things. Also, he did tell Jerry to keep his foot off of the table, which maybe also think of Sheldon, and he, rung bells over top of it and whatnot. And then he has George's head sitting inside this wooden triangle thing, and then he has him drink something, and George's like, oh, it ain't too bad. Next scene, though, we see an ambulance going by, and George's freaking out, going, I'm an eggplant! I'm an eggplant! And sure enough, George's body's, all purple. But at the same time, the driver of the ambulance and, the officer, whoever the heck it was in the back with Jerry, George, and Kramer, they got into an argument. They took it outside. They brawled with each other. They get back in, and the driver abandons him, and then Kramer starts arguing with him. And then George is like, get me to the hospital! Get me to the hospital! And he got pissed off because they stopped at that fight, and he goes, this is an ambulance! This is an emergency! Which, obviously George would be freaking out. But, of course, the driver and Kramer get in an argument, and then they crash into, a post or something like that. So then we go back to the hospital. George has a neck brace on, and his face is all, obviously, they did work on his face, and he had the tonsillectomy. Jerry came in like walking with like a band-aid on his forehead and a neck brace on as well, and he's like, "Oh, how you doing?" George, of course, can't talk because he just got his tonsils taken out. He just can't talk. And then he goes, "Yeah, how did you get the plastic neck brace?" And George's like, and then he's signaling for food, but Jerry doesn't know what he's talking about. Elaine, though, came in and brought George ice cream, and again, this is where, well, also Jerry claims that from the accident, Kramer went to tour, and apparently Kramer was healed very quickly. Opposite effect, though, on George, unfortunately. And, of course, the guy in the thing next to him was basically telling them all to shut up and whatnot, and then George just threw his ice cream over the rack or whatnot. As that happens, again, Jerry also, again, after how many tries, also again finds out what was said in that scene that Larry David was in, and yep, that's the episode. It was actually, again, an underrated episode, The Heart Attack. I am entertained again by, this being kind of like a George-based episode where George, like, completely blows out of proportion his health when it's not a heart attack, it's just his tonsils, just needs them taken out. And then getting like the goofiness of Kramer's character, like yes, we've seen things like him posing as a cop to get back a statue that they weren't even 100% sure to prove was theirs or not. There's an episode where he claims that even though he bet Jerry that he would do his levels, and he ends up not even starting them. He changed his mind, doesn't want them. He claims the bet is off, like something like goofy like that. Like, I like how, they're going to bring out more of that. And in the next episode, The Revenge, they actually start to bring out more of the physical comedy of Michael Richards in the Kramer character. So I definitely am looking forward to that as well. So guys, as always, that is my thoughts on the Heart Attack episode of Seinfeld. What are your thoughts on the Heart Attack episode? We have 2 episodes left for Season 2. Leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. Be sure as always to slap a like on the video and subscribe for more content to my channel. Follow me on Twitter at DemandAirBrony3. Until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll see you all later. Yada, yada, yada. Peace out, everybody.
No